We showed you earlier this week what it means to both PSG and Marseille in the Classique in France. Two teams that just hate each other. Lots of history there, a big rivalry, and they met again this past weekend, and it lived very much up to expectations, on and off the field, shall we say. The allegations are obviously very serious, being investigated. We don't know what was said, by whom, obviously hasn't been proven just yet. But to go to Twitter post-match and for these two players to go at it head-to-head once again, Danny, as a coach, if you saw your players doing this, how would you react?
I wouldn't like it. I think there's a place for it. And the way of getting one over on your opponent is obviously on the pitch, on the field. But there was obviously a lot of kind of tension between this game as well. Marseille knew that they had the opportunity to get one over on their rivals. This is, remember, a rivalry where Marseille fans were out in their hundreds or thousands for the Champions League semi-finals supporting the opposite team that PSG were playing. They hate each other, these two teams. I remember Benoit Giroud telling me how much he hates Paris Saint-Germain. So this is the nicest guy in the world, Benoit, telling me how much he hates Paris. So there's a big rivalry between these players. I think there's also a lack of respect between the two teams. And if I was a coach, I would have dealt with it in the locker room. Obviously, you're talking about superstars, elite superstars now that have their social following as well. So they feel that they have to get their message across somehow, and they feel hard done by. But I don't like seeing the tit for tat on Twitter. There's a better way to solve this.
And the actual game itself, I mean, that Donnybrook or whatever you want to call it, was embarrassing.
Handbags.
It was embarrassing.
There was a lot of handbags being thrown there, yeah, for sure.
It was more players just trying to get each other sent off than anything else.
Yeah,
obviously not good for either club.
The last minutes, seconds of the game as well, so it didn't look good. What was the ugliest post-match scrap you were involved in? I mean, obviously the 70s and 80s was something else. The 90s when you played generally, wasn't quite the same. But were there any that come to mind?
What, between players?
Yeah.
No, few fans.
Well,
few fans.
Where? West Ham.
yeah. I mean, you always get sort of scraps and things like that, but nothing quite like we saw there. Especially from the diving side of things and embellishment.
Millwall West Ham was always a lovely scrap. They loved each other, those two.
Yeah.
But the biggest one I was involved with was the West Brom Sheffield United game, where it actually got postponed because 4 Sheffield United players got red carded. So they were down to 7 men in the end, and the referee had to call it off. Neil Warnock was telling his players to break legs, and there was a horrible tackle in that game. George Santos against Andy Johnson.
Didn't he just get subbed on?
He just got subbed on, and he lined him up perfectly, and it was the biggest scrap I ever been involved with. The aftermath of it all, in saying that it was going to be replayed, where we were going to be awarded the points, even though the game was postponed at 65 minutes, I think it was. It was an absolute gong show.